I'm Eric Griggs. Hi. Slideshow. I tried F5. Bam. Now let's talk. I'm actually a process engineer by training. I've worked a lot in software here in the past few years. I've had to learn a thing or two about hardware, and now I'm kind of trying to do it all on my own because I got tired of working for crooked banks. So that's what I'm doing these days. But my background is with CRM stuff. I've got a little bit of idle on my hands, a lot of Six Sigma stuff behind me. That's kind of where I come from. I'm sort of the R2-D2 and C3PO of analysts. That is, I generally interface between the hardcore techies with the green skin in the back room and the rabid foaming at the mouth business partner who wants it now, yesterday, today. And I generally can speak both languages and work it back and forth. But what I really get really excited about is making things better for everybody. Whether you're in the back room coding or whether you're out on the front lines, let's say in a branch trying to sell banking services and products to somebody, or you're in Santa's workshop. Everything is process. And when you're a process engineer, you see everything you do as process in and of itself as a discipline. And there's some things we can learn to do. Now, inside the whole universe of process, one of the easiest things you can do is peer review. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Peer review, I forgot I put that in there. That's me. We'll come back to that. I hope I didn't put that on every slide. That's going to be a long slideshow, guys. This is the overview. We're going to talk about why you would want to do peer review in your organization. Again, it doesn't matter what you do. If you put on a presentation monthly like we do, we could do some peer review on my talk tonight. I could get some other folks who give talks, and they could tell me why I was horrible, why I was good, and what I could do better, right? We're going to talk about the different types of peer reviews. We're going to talk about the different methods that you can use when you do peer reviews, because one size does not fit all when you're talking about getting stuff done. If you've ever had anybody, raise your hand if you've ever had anybody just look over something you did to make sure you got it right. Right? That's a peer review. We call that a desk check. If it's real informal, you just walk over to somebody and say, hey, does this look right to you? We all do it instinctively, right? That's a peer review. That's on the one end of the scale. On the other end of the scale, if you're getting ready to deploy a brand new operating system to 50 million users, and you don't want to blow your margins with customer service for the next 5 years, you might want to do a more formal kind of peer review to make sure you got the thing right. You can't put a man on the moon without really good, tight peer review. So you can't fail. We're going to talk about how to give effective leadership, how to be an effective leader in a peer review, or how to be an effective leader of organizations when you have people under you and you're going to encourage them to do peer reviews. And finally, methods you can use to give and receive feedback. Again, another one of these overview slides, the introduction, the part we're doing now. We're going to talk about how to, defects are the enemy in process engineering altogether. You say process engineering, it's like airplane. But defects are what we want to get rid of, right? Peer review is not about the people, it's about the product. It's about trying to make the product perfect, or as perfect as we can. And so what we want to do is create the environment where people can find the mistakes without picking each other apart or losing their jobs, right? Because when your job says don't have any mistakes, then how can you invite people to find the mistakes without looking like a bad guy? So we're going to talk about the psychological things you can do about that. And the practice exercise, and a recap, you're going to love the practice exercise when we get to it, okay? I'm tired of doing this front stuff. Let's move on into the stuff. All right, 4 kinds of peer reviews. A peer review is internal to the project itself. Let's say we're in Santa's workshop and we're all making baby dolls, right? The baby doll team will come together and talk about how they can get their work done better. You might not talk about you might not have the reindeer people who are out in the stables getting the reindeer ready for Christmas time, but you want the people that are closest to the product that you're working on or the service that you're trying to present. Just about anybody can ask for a peer review. The team members themselves. Hold on. Anytime, and the scope can vary from a little piece of code, maybe to an entire global, a global plan. A QA review. This is when you want somebody with a clean set of eyes to come in. Let's say we've published standards. We're going to come up with a communications plan, and we said that we want everything bilingual. We want it to where, or multilingual. We want people with disabilities to be able to read it, right? We've got standards that we want to follow. You want to get things ready so that when you store them for posterity, that they fit in the project library and that everything is tagged and cataloged and proofread. So that's a good time when you get your bean counters to come in and make sure you've gotten rid of any standards type mistakes. Other types of review include the final inspection. This is important when you're getting ready to ship something out. And a project management review. This is in larger organizations. Now, if you're just a small shop, you might not have all 4 of these different kind of things, but a project management review is something that says, hey, who are the guys that are running the show? Are they doing the things the way that we want them to do it? The problem might not be with the stuff you're working on. It might not be with the way you're doing it, but it might be with the people that are running the show. Are we managing things according to the way we want to do them? Now, this stuff is coming from, big bank kind of methodology. I've used this for many, many years. So some of these things, if you don't work in that kind of environment, you might never see. But it's good to have it in your mind that there's different kinds of reviews. And what we're going to be talking about tonight is the simple part, the peer review, the stuff that anybody can use. Now, the purpose of the peer review, as I said earlier, is to make sure that the stuff is right. That's all that matters. Not pointing fingers or fault finding. Who made this mistake? Although we're going to keep track of that, because if we're managing appropriately, if somebody made a mistake, we want to find it and fix it. We want to create an environment where mistakes are okay if we catch them early, and I'll show you why in just a little bit. Because the math behind catching it early is just something that I don't think you're going to believe how expensive it is to let mistakes propagate over time. You want to integrate your peer reviews into the process of developing whatever it is you're doing. If you're developing a process of service, a process for creating a product, or other things. Again, like I said earlier, you want it as close to making the mistake as possible, because when bugs live beyond just a moment or two, they propagate. And they're like clothes hangers in your closet. If you let one wire hanger in, pretty soon the whole house is mommy dearest. So no wire hangers. You might not find all the mistakes, but you're likely to find the ones that are the most critical, the ones that are going to cause the most problems down the road. Can everybody hear me okay? Like that?
Luke, I am your father.
All right. Better? I don't know. I usually don't even need one. Too loud. How's that? All right. The purpose of doing peer reviews is to make you a better person at doing whatever it is you do. And like I said, you can be in Santa's workshop doing stuff. You could be a guy out presenting stuff. You could be a salesperson on the floor, right? You could be an air conditioning guy with Morris Jenkins or Brothers. Who has the dumber commercials? We'll talk about that during the break. Here's an example. Here's some code. Okay, you don't have to know what this is. It's not even real code probably. I don't know. I've used it for 20 years. It's code. A code snippet. Well, we got the function right here. Now, the QA person has got a list of standards and practices. They say every time we got a function, and they might not know anything other than, check, still on. They might not know anything other than this is what a function looks like, and every time we do a function, we're going to put some comments in, right? So let's say the QA person takes a look at this slice of code. They say, oh, no comment, right? They may not know what it does, but they know it's supposed to have a comment, and that has value in and of itself. Sometimes it's like asking your grandmother to read over your book report. She might not know a thing about what you're saying, but she can tell if you misspelled chrysanthemum, right? Because Granny's really good at Scrabble. So you need a QA person from the outside who knows what the standards are. On the other hand, a peer review is going to tell you, hey, this kind of code, when you do a function, we need arguments in here. Now, the QA person might not know that, but the peer reviewer knows the stuff you're doing, right? They need to have some tangible knowledge of the stuff you're working on. Finally, you get somebody to come in from the outside to make sure that, did we peer review this thing at all? And did we do QA review on it? You see how those three things work together? You got somebody inside close, making sure it's right. Somebody from standards and practices making sure you did it right according to the public standard. And then you got audit people making sure you did both of those checks. Again, this is in a process-heavy organization. You might not have all of these layers with all the formality associated with it where you work, but if you know how they would fit together, you can see how you put those things on. It's like describing an elephant by the parts. It's kind of good to see the whole thing together. All right? Questions so far? Go ahead. Back to the code. Hold on. We're good there, I think. Yes. Yes. Good question. And again, it would depend on the context of the organization. This is sort of a simple something for purposes of understanding. But let's say you had a person whose job it was to do QA on your code, and your standard says all functions must be commented. Now, you and I know it's very unlikely that you have one, but you might have somebody on the team whose job it is to, to make sure if you've got coding standards, to check it. Yeah. And again, it could be, some organizations, QA means testing. Yeah. And in practice, certainly in this town, QA does mean testing. But in the general sense, in the purest CMM sense, QA and testing are two different things. So I can certainly see your point of view. Certainly from experience, we know that QA people in Charlotte are testers. But QA people in many other organizations are not testers at all. They're just making sure that particularly if you're people like a Motorola type organization where QA is more like your process, like your friendly neighborhood Bobby policeman in London whose job it is to see everybody along, they take more of an active role. I meant Motorola. Did I say Microsoft? Oh, I meant Motorola. This was developed more from a Motorola perspective. Yeah, I don't have a Microsoft background. But CMM came up out of Motorola in the 70s and early 80s. My boss taught me this stuff. So, the bad news on peer reviews is that it takes time to do them. The good news is that whatever time you take to do your peer reviews up front eliminates rework and actually saves you time in the future. And I think I have, in the next slide, yes. Remember earlier I said what you want to do is catch the mistakes early? Along this axis here are the phases that you might have in a project, okay? That is the requirements gathering phase, designing whatever it is you're doing, actually coding and testing and integrating it in and shipping it on out to the customer, right? This is where you are and when you find a mistake going back up into that thing. Now, if we find a mistake in requirements and we catch it in requirements and fix it, it costs us 1 unit. How much does it cost us if we don't find that mistake until we ship it out to the customer? Anybody? 368 times. If it was $1 million to find it in requirement, it's now $368 million. So you can see, if you can see how to read this chart, and we'll share this out after the presentation, so you can take this back to your home or work at whatever. You can see the reason why you want to find things early is because they cost so much later on. This stuff came from, I got the study down here in the corner. You can check my facts on this. Now this came from my boss, again, back at Motorola, like I was mentioning earlier. Carl Williams did a study back in 1999. In case A, and these are collections of studies over time. When peer reviews were not used, see the number of calendar months, you're looking at on out over 8 months. Group of similar sized projects. For peer reviews, you see down here, these little red arrows that go back, says, oh, nope, found a mistake, let's fix it. Although you might have that review cycle in there, see those little parts where the arrows start over here, those are the review cycles. But look at what happens to the overall delivery time. Now similar sized projects are done in just under 6 months. Low-hanging fruit is what I subtitled this thing, and it really is such a common sense thing to do. But what you have to do is integrate it into your development life cycle. And again, it doesn't have to be a big Fortune 100 company kind of thing. If you're just a one-man shop with a workbench and a couple of guys working for you, or even a next-door neighbor who'll look over something occasionally, that's a peer review, okay? Questions? Yep. depends on the rigor necessary in what you did. How many people you got also depends on. It also depends on if you have the manpower or another person. Sometimes another person isn't easy to find, when you need them. Yes. Yes. And I have to, forgive me, I've paid for the idle training, I just haven't actually taken it yet. Things that you can review. Again, this is a presentation I've used for many years. Deliverable documents, your design documents, your low-level design, your source code, your manuals, your training documents, all your process documents, anything you want to peer review, you can peer review. Stuff that was old, that you just inherited. One of the last contracts I was on, I inherited a piece of software that was very critical. It was on everybody's machine in one of the large financial institutions here in this town, and there was no documentation. None. And so it was a daily process of opening up and trying to peer review something that had been in use for many, many years, and trying to track down who created it, who was the last person, who even knew anything about it, and trying to get a slice on their calendar to even talk about it. What else did I put in here? Oh, yeah. Things that evolve over time. Your plans, your work breakdown structures, templates and things that you reuse can often benefit for some peer review because the environment in which they were originally designed doesn't exist anymore. Maybe it's time for a new, project requirements document, business requirements document. Questions? Okay. Ways that stuff can be wrong. It's just how you could define this. We're going to come back to this when we do the really fun exercise in a little bit. All right? And the truth of the matter is, the only reason why we classify stuff is so that when we write it down and hand it off, the other person understands where the mistake is. Right? It's not so that we can hang somebody out to dry, or that's vague when really it's incorrect. It really doesn't matter. It's wrong in any case, and I'm just trying to help you understand it. So don't get really hung up on these things, but sometimes giving people these words can help them explain better in writing or in email or these days in text messages or instant messages what it is you mean. One thing can be wrong, incorrect, not needed, inconsistent happens a lot, as does ambiguous, because sometimes your smartest guy in the room maybe isn't the easiest person to understand. And maybe he's, like I do, making up words all the time. Half the time I know what I mean. I don't know which words I used 5 minutes ago or which ones I'm going to use next. But if I've got your eye contact and you're with me and you're asking me questions, I know you understood what I meant, right? And so that's what the purpose of this is, to make sure the people you want to understand you can get what you're saying. Incomplete comes up a lot. A standards violation you can catch in peer review. It's the purpose of the QA review guys to do the job, but you can make their job easier if you catch it in peer review. No sense leaving it for the QA guy if you can catch it when you're peer reviewing. And finally, things like typos and things like that. We hope that our automated typo software works, but I don't know if you tend to be creative with language as I am. The typo, the spell check never gets it right. I did that one already. I think I went backwards. All right. Now, some people have this the other way. So don't get hung up on it. But where I come from, Sev 1 means no. This must be fixed. I'm not even going to talk to you till you fix it. It's not going anywhere. All the way down to Sev 4. You know what they say about opinions. Everybody's got a Sev 4. Okay, so it could be done a different way, but I'll let it go. Sometimes you have to let people have a Sev 4 thing just to get the discussion on and move it on out the door. Everything has to be dealt with and closed up and finished, but not everything has to be, shall we say, successfully closed the way the person who brought it up wants it to be. But sometimes what you want to do is not shut people down, right? Because this one person who gets on your nerves all day long pointing out mistakes, 9 times out of 10 it may be trivial, but there's that 1 time in 10 when they really know what you're talking about. So sometimes it's useful to have the Sev 4 kind of thing in your pocket just in case you need it, and you can catch all their other stuff, and then catch the thing that's really important. You see what I'm saying? There's kind of There's a thing about, it's like when you're brainstorming. If you're coming up with ideas, one of the rules of brainstorming is don't shoot anything down. Nothing is ridiculous. Everything is acceptable. Being creative and being decisive are 2 different skills, right? One is art and the other is science. And so what we want to do is leave Spock at the door when we really want Da Vinci. And when you're done with the Da Vinci, you bring Spock in and then you apply the logic to it. You follow me? Same thing here. There's some art to catching the mistakes. And the art is making the environment and the language and the tools available to find the mistakes. And we don't care who made them. If you need to coach somebody out of the organization over time as you're managing by facts, that's one thing. If, on the other hand, you've got a guy in here who's trained to do one thing, has never had the training, you're doing him a disservice if you fire him when really what you need to do is educate him. You see what I'm saying? Questions? Dude in the back. No, but you're paying attention now, aren't you? I'm teasing. Okay, project asset library is what we used to call them when I was back in the day. What do you guys call it? Where you're ma'am in the red dress? What do you call your project asset library? Your configuration management system? What do you guys call it where you are? Your system for configuration management? Yeah, it's called what now? SDN. Okay. Anybody else have something like that? What are our other project asset libraries? Where do you store your code, guys? Yeah. Visual source safe is one. What else is out there, guys? Where do you store your code? I don't know. I think it's on the H drive in the new code folder. GitHub. That's another. You guys have GitHub, right? Where else do you store stuff? Where do you store your training manuals? SharePoint. Excellent example. No, they don't. Okay, you guys work it out. Garnet, where do you store your recipes? Garnet don't cook. If anybody cooks, she's looking for a husband. Oh, you're not there, but you got to. Where do you store your stuff, honey? In a safe. Where do you store your pictures of you and your gal pals out on the weekend? Do you have a folder you put them in? On your phone, but you know where they are on your phone. What about you, sir? Yeah, but you know how it's organized. Now here's the thing. As long as you got yours and I got mine, I don't care how you store yours. But when we've all got ours and we're all sharing the stuff, we got to agree on how we're going to title it, how we're going to version it, who can have it out at any one time. That whole discipline is called what? The discipline. Configuration management, right? We know how we're going to version it. We know who's in control. Who can change this thing? No, you can't change that thing. That's going out to 5 million customers. And you want to change it the night before deploy? Oh, no. You're fired. You see what I'm saying? How small you are, how big you are, it's still something you got to consider, right? All of a sudden, you wrote a cookbook. Now everybody wants a copy of your cookbook. Oh, no. How would I get these recipes, right? You can't scale it up. So there's some things you have to talk about. This whole thing, we're going to talk about it in the context today. That thing where you store your stuff is the Project Asset Library, or PAL, okay? Just use that as our operational word. That could be, what was that thing you called? SharePoint. That could be Visual Short Safe. It could be the thing you called, what's that, Dropbox? It could be a folder in the Dropbox. And if you've got a lot of stuff in there, right, you got to have stuff, right? You got to have ways to find things. Call it the PAL for today, okay? You'll understand what I'm talking about. Now, the peer review tango. Think of it like a dance, okay? A simple flow chart. We're going to have a peer review. Did we pass the peer review? That is, hey dude, I need you to look at this. You take it from me. Hey dude, did you look at my thing? What? Did you say what thing? No, he went and played golf. Was it successful? No. So we go back and say, hey man, I really need you to look at this thing. He looks at it. You tell me how many mistakes? What? You're going to show them to me. Okay, now I know where they are. Is it successful? Yes. So I give it to my quality guy. Dude, does it pass the standards? All right. Now we're done. So now it's approved. And where do we put it? Bingo. We put it back in Visual Sort Safe or wherever. You see what I'm saying? Have the people who know it look at it. Have the people who don't know it, or the standards people look at it, then it's baseline. Baseline means this is version 1, the blessed version that goes out to everybody. Those who pay attention will be rewarded. We don't send stuff out that's not final, right? If it's the way I do it, the way many people do it, if it's version 0.001, goes nowhere. I don't even give you a soft copy. I'll give you a hard copy of it on a piece of paper, but I'm not even going to give you a soft copy of it. Until it's version 1.0, you're not going to get it. Unless it's maybe up on the screen. You see what I'm saying? Those are not baseline. They're working drafts. The baseline is when everybody says, yep, that's good. Yep, that's good. It's in the library. You see what I'm saying? Otherwise, it's just my little local group that's working on it. Questions? You guys are in school? Ever heard of this before? Makes sense, doesn't it? Yes. I'll send you a bill. You too. Two kinds. We can do one-on-one peer review. That's me and you at the desk. Or we might have a different expert from every team come in. The difference is the complexity, right? There's a guy who wrote Mythical Man Month. Anybody? There's a book called The Mythical Man Month. 9 women cannot have a baby in a month, correct? How long does it take to have a baby? What if I put 100 women on it? What if I put 100 men on it? The truth. In software, in technology, the more people you put on a project, especially if it's running over budget or behind schedule, the longer it takes. Why? How many people at this table? 6? How long does it take all 6 of you to communicate with one another? Right. I got 2 people, I got 2 nodes. I got 6 people, I got 6 factorial nodes. That's how many different ways there are for that message, not only to be communicated, but to get screwed up in the process. So the worst thing you can do, and I forget the name of the guy who wrote it. There's a book called The Mythical Man Month, and he essentially says 9 women cannot have a baby in a month. The thing takes as long as it's going to take. There's an optimal amount of resources in terms of money and equipment, right? There's an optimal staffing. You're a project manager. I can tell by the way you're looking at me like, yep. There's an optical amount of, I'm not a project manager because I like to sleep at night. There's an that's the word, amount of people on this project. Any more, and it's going to take longer because the communication gets garbled. Any fewer, and people are working up, getting sick because they're working too hard, right? So what we want to do is balance the needs of whatever it is we're trying to do. A lot of times, and you know this, especially in this city, somebody's out on the golf course, right? There's a cocktail napkin, there's a promise made, and that's when the software is supposed to get delivered. Nobody ever bothered to decide the thing, right? It's just, that's what Bob said on the golf course last Saturday, that's when we got to deliver it. Hire 5,000 people, which makes it better or worse? Worse. Because 9 women cannot have a baby in a month. Okay, so when you're going to do you got to prepare for the thing, you got to do the review and the follow-up, which we'll talk about. One-on-one, it's easy. You get the material, find somebody to review it, schedule some time if you need to sit down, because not everybody has time to look at your stuff. Like, dude, I got no time to look at your stuff. I got my own thing. This gets back to what we talked about earlier. That is the soft skill, the mojo, the magic. We got to create an environment. All right, look. You got the guitar, right, lady? Work with me here, sister. We're both on stage. You ever sit down with somebody else who picks and sings? Show me how you do that bridge. I had that finger in all wrong. That's a peer review, right? Oh, no, honey, you're doing it all wrong. How much time does that save you? I'm sorry, how much headache or heartache does it save you? Or does it give you new skills? Does it make your song better when you know how somebody did something? And you bring something to the table too, right? You got students? Ever learn anything from your students? We're going to get back to that in a minute. Because you don't have to have Einstein in the room to have a valuable person. Do you see what I'm saying? Brown shirt. I'm going to pick on you because I can. You might not know what I'm talking about. You know the story about the emperor's new clothes? Who knows the story? Tell it. Listen to this. Invisible fabric.
And he puts it on, and he walks out in the public eye, got to move sleeve up, move high dollar for this.
Except, no. You look beautiful. Little kid. He's not wearing anything at all. Sometimes because these guys are the chief brown nosers. They're out here to make me feel like I'm important. You don't know me from Jack, right? You're like, dude, you're naked. Sometimes it's the guy in the back that doesn't know Jack who can set you straight. You see what I'm saying? See what I'm saying? Go ahead. She's got an idea. Exactly. You get things from all over the place. And sometimes you don't need an expert to teach you something. Sometimes it's it's the novice in the room that can see the fatal flaw that all of these people that have been burning the midnight hour every night trying to get it right didn't see because it was right in front of them. Questions? Sometimes that's true. One size does not fit all, and you know this. We can take the NASA approach, or we can take the Bob software approach. And if we try to apply Bob software size process to NASA, we will fail. And if we try to apply NASA size software to Bob software, we will fail. So it has to be the right amount of rigor. No, what I'm saying is when you do peer reviews, sometimes you don't need the expert. Sometimes it's good to include the novice because they can show you things you might not see. But did I miss your point? Oh, well then we agree. Go ahead. But again, this is in a software development environment, right? Doesn't have to be software. Doesn't even have to be tech. Go ahead, Garnet. She's talking about there's a tool inside of Visual SourceSafe, was it? Or there's a piece of software that allows people who write code to peer review through the tool. So they can send each other messages, right? But just like I took my buddy yesterday, we went up to buy him a new van. He's a courier. He had 500,000 miles on his minivan. It was a new time. But I'm peer reviewing. I'm out here. I'm not peer reviewing. I'm just doing some, process people. So I'm watching how they're selling cars. And I'm thinking, do these salesmen not get together and talk to one another about how? Of course not. Why? That's exactly, because they're in competition with one another. And this is a problem we'll talk about later. You want an environment where you can be. Yeah, you're right. But you know who does this a lot? Anybody in here ever worked in public education or college or whatever? Sometimes having other teachers sit in on your class. You know what? You say a lot. And every time you say you look down at your shoes and you lose me. Or you're mispronouncing this word and you're making imbeciles out of everybody in your class. Or did you know that little Johnny was out there, was back there hacking your network while you were doing such and such? And it can be anything. The best thing you can do, there's a guy, I forget the name, it was called, something about checklist. It was an Indian neurosurgeon, and he wrote a book about checklists. The Checklist Manifesto, you know the guy's name? There's a book called The Checklist Manifesto, where they talk about a very simple thing you can do. Surgeons don't go into surgery now without a checklist of everything they use so they don't leave stuff inside of people. Pilots don't take off from the runway without doing the safety checklist before they go. That way they don't crash on the ground. There are basic job tools you can create, and they don't have, this is basic level, let's stop and figure out how we're going to do it before we do it stuff. Instead of ready, fire, aim, ready, and do things in the right order, stop for just a minute and figure out how you're going to do it, and is the way you're thinking about doing it better. That kind of level stuff. You with me? Moving right along. Wait a minute. In big organizations, you have this problem of traceability. You guys have dealt with traceability. Traceability means, and if you've never worked in this, you guys might not know it if you're students, but you will be learning this. Who put this in the code? There's an instant message program in my accounting software. What? Who asked for this? Who coded? Did we pay somebody to put this in here? Where was that in the requirements document? Where was that in the high-level design document? And whose budget is this coming out of? And who do I need to fire is what that comes down. Traceability is just like it's a grid. It shows you this line of code came from here in the low-level requirements. It came from here in the high-level requirements. It came from here in the business requirements document. And this person requested it at the boardroom. That's how it's kind of done in industry. And, simple like that. And they have, like SourceSafe or these other things have got it integrated into where you're in the Scrum team, and you got this little thing, and it's your job to figure out how to make this piece of code work this week. But you know where it comes from. And it's got somebody's signature, somebody else's butt is on the line, and your job is to do it. Somebody else is going to figure out how to pay for it. Again, in this very political city where things happen like that, accountability is a big deal. Traceability is a way of ensuring accountability for every little thing. If you're Bob's software, you know it's in there because you wanted it in there. And sometimes the best things come from people trying to skirt the rules. But that's another topic for another day. Process engineers are the worst for following process. Just so you know. Guilty. Oh, wait a minute. One other thing. Study the material beforehand. If you're going to, somebody says, hey, dude, can you read over this? I do this a lot with people who complain. If you got a complainer, and you know who they are, they don't like change. You're one of these, aren't you? You're not a complainer. Do we have any complainers in the group? You know you're a complainer. You don't like it just because it's different. And you're going to complain about it, right? I know he's like this. So what do? I take it to him, and I give it to him, and I go away. Now he's going to complain, but I'm over here talking to you. And then he's got it out already. By the time I see it, and I'll know because I'll do this 2 or 3 times, and I'll figure out how long I have to avoid him before the complaining's over. And then I come back and I bring Bojangles or something. I bring donuts. And then by the time I give him the donuts, and oh, thank you. He's forgotten that it changed it. Now he's thinking about donuts. And then I got him warmed up, and he gives it back. I call that the drop and run strategy for complainers. Yeah, okay, he'll find something else. They always do. They'll find something to complain about. Anyway, what I was getting to is you want him to actually look at the thing before you come back to him to talk about it. And his complaining, just the thing that makes him annoying, not that you're annoying, but just for instance. Let's say he's annoying. The things that make him annoying get in the way of finding mistakes. What else gets in the way of is if he never read it in the first place. And he's wasting your time reading it. Now, if he's the kind of guy you just got to sit there and then schedule an hour with him and read it line by line, and you can nip that in the bud. Pretty soon you'll have him trained to actually read it. But again, there's some voodoo to doing this right. All right. When you're doing it formally with the brown shirt, thinks someone let him get away with it. Caught you. When you're doing this formally with a traceability matrix, the first thing you do is, where do we even get the requirement to do this? Why are we even looking at it? Make sure it comes in, right? You trace the input into why are we doing this? Is what we're talking about when we're talking about tracing the input. Make sure there's a mapping. There's no new parts here. We don't have anything we haven't agreed to work on. Huh? Is this a new thing? What's it called? It's an idle thing I haven't studied yet. Yeah? Idle? Something else? I don't know. I'm not a project manager. Bless your heart. You see he doesn't get much sleep at night, folks. Project manager right here. He'll be happy to talk to you later. He'll calendar that. Anyway, thank you. The pen what? I don't know anything about it. It's a what? Oh, okay. It's in there. It's like a handbook for project management. Okay, so you do that first. Let's see. Then you do the review, find the defects, and complete the form. I'll show you what I mean in a minute. The forms don't have to be complicated. It could be a Post-it note, as long as that Post-it note gets taken care of, right? It's just a matter of catching the stuff. When you're done, you have something tangible that says, I understood what you said, and I fixed it. See? It's real simple. It's like a checklist or whatever, but it's so simple. I got it. I found it. I hear you're saying, and I fixed it. That way, we talked about that, but I didn't do anything. Oh, doggone it! There's $5 billion down the drain. Or if you're Bob Software, there's $50 down the drain. Should have fixed it before, right? What is that ding? Huh? Oh, okay. Bless his heart. All right. And again, when we're getting way back up a heavy concept, the idea we want to manage by fact, right? When we're getting at the highest levels, we want data. You ever guys watch the Shark Tank? Right? What were your gross sales? What's your, I don't know, some kind of calculus thing they're talking about. What's that? Cost of goods sold. What's one of these complicated things they throw out on Shark Tank? I never know what it is. You know, they're like talking about, it's calculus to me, as some kind of function derivative something. What's your derivative of your marketing mojo? I don't know. That's management by fact. When you start to collect, well, how many defects do we find last time we did a similar size project? Did we have fewer? That means we're probably getting better, right? Or it could mean we need a break. I'm getting the break signal. Give me just a second. Going the wrong way. Group peer review is very similar, except you've got more people involved, you need more time for people to study, and you've got different roles, right? Like I said, you've got 6 people here, you've got so many communication nodes. Sometimes it can be very useful if you want to assign different roles for people to make sure, like you've got a timekeeper, right? You've got devil's advocate. These are kind of roles that you can assign to people. Yeah, let's go ahead and break. I'll cover this in more detail. You want to talk for a minute? Yeah, we'll break now. What do I say? 10-minute break. I'll see you at 20 till, guys. There's all this, you know I'm going to bring you all up front here in a little bit, right? All right. So it's not, this is planting a seed, so it's not a shock because I know you're all IT people. We're dealing with a lot of Asperger's in this room. Serious introversion. It's all right. You know how you can tell an introverted accountant, right? He's staring at your shoes. Wait a minute. As an extrovert accountant, I screwed it up. Another introvert joke. So Herbert Hoover was very famous for being quite taciturn, as they say. He didn't speak very much. So this man shows up at a White House dinner he's invited to. He goes, "Mr. President, my wife bet me I couldn't get you to say 3 words." He looked at the man and said, "You lose." True story. So the difference with a one-on-one peer review and a group peer review is that you've got more people involved. You have the potential for serious waste of time, serious inefficiencies if you don't define the roles, you don't clearly manage the outcome, manage the expectations, which will produce the outcome, and you don't have some kind of procedure for doing stuff. All right? It's also really important that you get your prep work done in advance. That means things have to be copied, things have to be handed out. That's your cue. We're not there yet, but we'll be there in a minute. Things have to be copied, things have to be handed out. People have to have time set aside to do what you ask them to do. They also maybe need to be trained to do what you're asking them to do, right? So you can't just do this stuff overnight. I told you, peer review is low-hanging fruit. It doesn't require a lot of money. It doesn't require a lot of training, but it doesn't mean it doesn't require any training. What we're going to do here in just a little bit is training on peer reviews. We've got a cool exercise. It's always a blast when we do it, and you're going to like it. You're going to like it. I promise. Sometimes you need an orientation meeting. Sometimes if you're in dislocated organizations where you got somebody on the East Coast, somebody on the West Coast, you got to do virtual in time. Kids are growing up with chat sessions and Google Plus and stuff. So you younger folks, this is news to you. This is like, oh, boring. We do this all the time. Back in the day, having somebody live video in real time was a big deal. And half the time it didn't work. Now, you know, you do it on your phone while you're driving down the road on the way to the golf course. Or the, what do they call it? Frisbee golf. Frisbee golf. The jokes write themselves. I'm not going there. All right. This dude, Fagan. Peter or Carl? Carl Fagan. Carl Sagan, Michael Fagan. You're going to put a man on the moon if you believe. They put a man on the moon. Well, if you do, it was done through some serious peer review. Sometimes, you know this, you've written something, you think it's perfect. You know what it's supposed to say. But do you know what it really says? No. Anytime I ever had anything important that I had to turn in school, I gave it to my grandmother, who dropped out of high school to marry my granddad after the war. She didn't have a high school diploma. She didn't need one back then. She had an MRS degree. And that was fine. In the 40s, it was not a big deal. But she was a killer Scrabble player. And if I knew if my granny could understand it, right, that I wrote it clearly. And I didn't assume anything. And I knew if my granny could understand it, when she got through with it, it was spelled right. Right? Because she knew how to spell. She was really good at that. I knew what it meant to say. I didn't notice the spelling mistakes, because every time I read it, my eyes just went right past it. But not Granny's eyes. Carl Fagan came up, I always call him Carl Fagan, Michael Fagan. This thing called a Fagan Review. This is where you sit down with your stuff. If we're doing code, I hope we didn't lose her. She's good. When you're doing code, somebody's job, like you're going to be my reader. And we're going to sit down at this table, and I'm going to hand you, I caught you, didn't I? I'm going to hand you my business requirements document, and he's going to read it out loud, line for line, and we're all going to sit here and hear it. Now, did you ever see that movie, Apollo 13? Right. You know in that movie where they're running out of oxygen, and they got to make some kind of thing to scrub the oxygen, right? But they knew what was in that capsule, right? They knew what was in that manual. They practiced it on Earth and got a solution before they phoned it up, and those men are alive today because they peer-reviewed it. Am I right? That's what I'm talking about. Again, the jokes write themselves. A Fagan review is where you assign a reader, you assign a timekeeper, you assign a dungeon master, whatever you got to assign. Very formal. You've got entry and exit criteria. For a defect is an instance in which we did not satisfy the requirement. That's a quote from Michael Fagan. That's actually sort of gets to the heart of what process engineers do. We want to engineer the defect out of the product or service. For instance, when Bank of America acquired Fleet, I was on the team that went up to Norfolk. There's a really cool call center up there. And we had never really dealt with call centers before. But to a process engineer, process is process. It doesn't matter if we're baking cakes or answering phones. It's a process. And so we got to see this thing. And we put... I got off track. I don't know where I was going. Fleet. It's amazing they should name a fleet after an enema after a bank after an enema. Strike that, reverse it. You paying attention? The jokes write themselves. So, here are some roles in a Fagan review. You got the author, the person who wrote the material. They know what it's supposed to say. But they're in the room to answer the, well, no, that's not what I meant it to say. Is that what it really says? You got the reader. I told you about it. The tester reviews the material. I hate we lost our tester. From a testing point, anybody else in here do testing? Like that's your main thing? We don't have a single tester in the room? No, they're at work testing. And the moderator, who's like your moderator, MC. Group peer review, same thing, except you got more people involved. Introduce what's going on, and you work your way through the loop. Raise questions, answer questions, takes notes, and you move on. The purpose of the peer review is to fix the mistakes, true or false. What? Who said it? Where was it? The purpose of the peer review is not to fix the mistakes. Well, think about that. If we're going to have a peer review and actually fix the mistakes, how long is this peer review going to take? Right. The purpose of the peer review is just to find them. You go fix them offline. The people who fix them might not even be the people in the room having the peer review. That's somebody else's job to fix them. It's our job to find them, capture them, hand them off, hand them out. That's the project manager's job, right? Track them down, browbeat, waterboard, dictating whoever you got to get the thing fixed, and then make sure it's signed off and placed in the, where do we put the stuff? Back in the pile. We'll see that in a minute. Did I put it on this slide? No, it'll be on the next one. The output. When you're done with your peer review, just like with the one-on-one, you got something that says that your project, whatever you're working on, is technically correct. You can use the form, record the data, you fix the error, and then if necessary, you go back through and do it again. Because sometimes when you fix one thing, what happens? Exactly, because you have codependencies that don't come out until you fix earlier errors. That's why we want to catch them as early as possible so they don't propagate. Questions? Moving right along. There's a great book out. What's the name of that book? The Lincoln book about Lincoln's cabinet, Lincoln's war cabinet. Lincoln did not put his buddies in his cabinet. Lincoln put his critics in his cabinet. And it's a very interesting study in how to lead. In fact, what was that thing called, Garnet? We were reading on the way over here. I got something from a recruiting firm, Queen Associates. They really push that they're big on diversity. And the truth is, the more people that you have sitting at the table from a different background, the better your chances are of coming up with solutions that will work in challenging circumstances. Right? You've heard it said, when all you got's a hammer, the whole world's a nail. Yes, sir. Outside. Exactly. Keep your friends close. And Lincoln was a believer in this. You go back and I wish I could remember the name of the book. There's a book. It's very interesting. If you read about the people that Lincoln surrounded and stuffed his cabinet with, he was a very shrewd politician, and he really truly believed in this guy's a troublemaker. Well, you come up here and sit next to me. I had a guy, a statistics professor in college that did exactly that. Another story. Anyway, you're supposed to have a peer review. It's on the schedule, so we're going to have it, right? Project manager? Right. Is that what the slide says? No, what's it say? Have the peer review if... That's right. You expect you're going to have a few number of... If you expect a whole bunch of defects, maybe you're not done yet. Right? So just because it's on your project management plan or your project plan, it doesn't mean now's the time. It may need you need to go back to your powers that be and say, we're not ready for this. We're behind schedule. We got some slippage here. Yeah, it should have been. There's a whole lot of woulda, shoulda here. The Team of Rivals. Thank you, sir. The book is called Team of Rivals by... It's sitting on the shelf at my house. It's called A Team of Rivals, and it's a really interesting book. Have the review if everybody's prepared. Delay the review if people are not prepared, but you get into this loop. I'm not ready. Why are you not ready? That's right. You're not ready because you were screwing off on a job. You're not ready because... Or he doesn't know that somebody slipped some code in, right? Or they went around the project, they slipped the code in, but really we need to have the review. He's just using this because you've rewarded him for doing it in the past, right? Again, like I said, there's a lot of wizardry involved in knowing the personalities of the stuff, and you learn that with experience. But just know that sometimes delaying... Was that a good one? Thank you. Sometimes delaying is not the tactic. Change the agenda. If all of a sudden you find out I've got all 5 of the people in the room, we can use half the day for a peer review. We don't expect very many mistakes. We can use the other half of the day to do the most valuable thing we can do. I'm not kidding. When you do it right, not playing golf, real team building. Well, sometimes they're real. You know, sometimes playing golf or foosball or whatever people play is useful because you learn, oh, that's why I shouldn't call it 4 in the afternoon. They got to pick up the twins or whatever from bowling practice or shooting from the hip here. Sometimes learning that little trick or learning that, you know, on Wednesdays, Sandy takes her mom to the therapist or whatever. Sometimes that's the difference between getting what you want delivered on time and failure of the whole project. It's that one little thing you find out when you just have a minute to sit back and realize you're working with a human being, and that human being has needs and wants, just like you do, and contingencies. No go if you expect number of defects high. Again, we talked about that already. It means you're not done working. It's not time to review it. Moving right along. Get the right people in the room. What's the purpose of having their peer review? What? To find the mistakes, right? So you want the people in the room. You want the complainer. You want the guy, but you want him to feel comfortable and welcome because, dude, I know you and I don't always get along, but I know I really value your criticism because I know behind it really, And these are the words you can use. Write them down. I know behind it you really want us all to succeed, and I value that in you. It's not who I am, but I value that in you. If you can do that, go write it down. You don't have to mean it. Just say it and sound sincere. Mainly project members. Sometimes you're going to bring in an outside specialist. Guys, I used to have a guy when I was at the design. Do they still have the Design Engineering Center at Bank of America? The DET, and it was the DEC. Back when it first started, I was over there. And I had a guy, he was a blind guy, visually impaired, if you want to be politically correct. He was blind, he's a friend of mine. Anytime we had UI issues come up, because he was a friend of mine, I could get him in my design sessions, and I would have him look through, not physically look through, but he had a screen reader. I would have him review the things from an accessibility point of view and bring a whole other perspective. This is before it was built into stuff. We're talking about custom software. So sometimes you're going to bring in specialists who have a unique point of view, who knows something you don't. Conflict potential. That is, these guys don't get along, or 3 to 5 is the magic number. It's the magic number for bullet points on a slide. It's the magic number of words per bullet point. You'll notice none of my slides, if I'm doing a good job, have more than 25-ish words on them, plus or minus. I'll send you a bill for that. Make all your work better from now on. The magic number is 3 to 5. You want 3 things or 5 things. If it's 4, then go back and look at it. 7 is okay. It's prime. There's 1 in every group. How many words are on that slide? Less than 25 words? Are there more than 25 words on that slide? I doubt it. I never counted them. But you'll notice these slides all tend to be rather sparse with actual words, because they're to clue me in on what to say and to reinforce what I'm saying back here. But your eyes are mostly here, right? And I'm seeing if you got it or not. That's kind of good instructional design. But 3 to 5 is the magic number. It's also, turns out, the magic number for small group communication. Much more than 5, and it becomes an inefficient group. Because you got some guy who's not contributing, who delays, or who annoys people, or who distracts. And then you still got to schedule around him and finding another slot for somebody who doesn't really participate. But if he doesn't come, then his boss gets annoyed that you didn't include them, and they feel like whatever. So 3 to 5 is a number. The last one's really important. You're my boss. You're doing my annual review, and you come in here, and I'm supposed to show the defects. I'm supposed to be okay with people pointing out the defects in my work. But I don't let that happen because I don't want to look bad in front of my boss, because he's going to do my annual review. So unless you have got really tight groups with lots and lots of long-term team building stuff, you don't want your boss to sit in on the peer review, because it defeats the purpose, which is what? To find the mistake, not to find them. We reduce them over time. Finding them. Anything that causes those defects not to be found, cut it out. Including, don't have the supervisor in there if it's going to have that effect. You see what I'm saying? Now, a good boss will encourage. It's like, I was going to be a band director. Whole other story. Like, I can do 3 hours on that. But when you've got some kid playing a wrong note, you want to hear it. Loud, out of key, you want to hear it. If there's a mistake out there that you didn't hear until the concert, and all of a sudden as everything's coming along beautifully and honk in the background, why didn't you catch that in rehearsal? See what I'm saying? That whole psychology of now I'm on stage kicks in. So you want to create an environment where you can find the mistakes. We did that one already. I must be clicking the wrong button. Yep. What was that book called again? Team of Bright. I need to put that on this slide. It's a really good book. We talked about that stuff. New slide. Okay. How you can make these reviews better. First of all, before you go in, remind yourself, I'm here, I'm doing this because I want the work to be right. And you remind everybody else. You level set. Guys, we're not here to pick apart dudes who worked really hard on this. Thank you so much. I hope you can take our feedback. We know you did a good job. The last one you did was great. We're here to help you find stuff that's wrong. So you make the author feel okay and not defensive. Defensiveness is no good, is it? You can't take feedback from folks if you're defensive. Get the people with the right skills. Make sure everybody's comments are covered. Again, here's where you get off track, trying to fix the stuff. You'll see what I mean in a minute when we do the exercise. The purpose is to capture it. It's like when we're talking about brainstorming. No idea is out of bounds when you're brainstorming. Because critiquing the ideas is an engineering task. Coming up with the ideas is an artistic task. They're two different sides of the brain. And so you want to get the ideas out, and then selecting the right ideas, the orders, the finesses, is a whole other process. Avoid discussing the solutions. Use effective feedback techniques, which we'll talk about. Use the checklist and assign somebody the devil's advocate. This happened during the Cuban Missile Crisis. Anybody can talk about that? We almost blew the world up. Why? Who knows it? Who knows the story? Anybody? Go ahead. What is groupthink, please? We are a highly cohesive group right here. We've been working together for 40 years. I know how loud the man snores at night. I know, and I agree with him. I know he knows what he's talking about. Keep going. We're talking about the Cuban Missile Crisis, the nuclear warheads. Go ahead. Oh, is he right? Right. They all agreed with it so much. Surely if we invade Cuba, they will rise up and overthrow this horrible government they have. That was what was going on. And nobody, because they all got along. It's okay, it's great to get along. But sometimes if you all get along and think just alike, and this is where diversity comes into the picture, if you all think just alike, then nobody says, hey, that's stupid, and here's why. So sometimes assigning a devil's advocate keeps you from blowing up the world. This is my listening slide. When you want to give somebody feedback, you want to be specific. You know this thing sucks. I could tell you threw it together at the last minute, and I hate you. Very vague, and also I'm not talking about the stuff, am I? I'm talking about the person. We want to talk about, you know what you did right here in this paragraph? I'm not sure, here's the magic word, I'm not sure I really understand what you're saying. Could you clarify? Is there a better way to say this? You know, boss, you might just be wrong. I love it. If you don't know these words, learn them. My boss taught me this about how I should answer to his boss. What was his name? I don't remember the dude's name. You know, you might just be right. And monkeys might fly out of my nose. I could think inside my head, but you know, boss, you might just be. It says nothing, but it sounds very agreeable, doesn't it? I'm confused. Then you're taking it on you. Yeah, so it's a very non-confrontational way of getting a person the room to back up and punt. You're not backing them into a corner and saying, you're an idiot, I hate you, you did this the night before. Pardon me for picking up. You're an idiot, I hate you, you did this the night before. And instead, you're really focusing on, I don't know what you mean, or I know this is wrong, but I don't want to make you look like the idiot I know you are. So I'm going to give you room to try to make it better here in real time. As an equal, again, this is the whole supervisor thing. I keep looking at you because you think you probably manage people, don't you? Yes? You, Fred Rogers, you manage people, don't you? Oh, who manages people? All right, then you don't feel, I don't know, I just feel so, I don't know, transparent here. That was my looking like I was thinking. Go ahead. You're having insights, aren't you? I can tell you're thinking about things. Darn it. You supervise people. What's the skill you use? When you have to tell somebody they're doing something wrong, but you really want them to hear you, what do you say? Be you straight out with it. Well, sometimes people understand you better when you're not hemming and hawing. Depends on the person, right, though? You can't tell everybody that straight out there, can you? Ah. Exactly. Pull them to the side so it's not all about I'm better than you in front of everybody else. Because some people don't hear the words you say. What is that thing? They won't remember what you said. They'll remember how you made them feel. And that's true. Ponder while I walk back over here, did the clicker. Silence. Oh, yeah. That was 10 seconds of silence. No. Sometimes it takes that long for the person who had the thought to know how to get the thought out in a way that's not going to set the room on fire. Or sometimes they're working it through. And so, like, I know I've got a certain amount of time. I've got to get all this material out. And I've tried to to put it down in the smallest amount of time. But sometimes waiting is the most important. You know there's something that's not being said. You can call on folks like I do, or you can just sit. And it comes out. Oh, absolutely. And you can use that to your advantage. That's the voodoo part. Questions? Silent guy at the desk. How to listen. What was your phrase you used a minute? I don't understand, right? I'm confused. Try to be not defensive. Allow people. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to speak while you were interrupting. What was that? Take notes. In face-to-face meeting, remember body language and eye contact. It's why I try to get out of the slides. I know this stuff. I know what I want to say. This is to remind me of what I wanted to tell you and to help you see where I'm going with it, right? So this is really just home base. Keep coming back to it, but that's not the point. The point is making connections. We did that one already. Thank you. Okay. When you're having peer reviews, especially a group peer review, there's different people are coming to the table with different things. Somebody needs a peer review. Why? Because it's in my project plan, and we're supposed to have a peer review now. Now, in really efficient, effective organizations, it's built in. And we don't go on to the next step until I have a document that says we did it, who attended, and all the defects were closed. Right? If you're a small shop, you might not have that. You might have a sticker on there, and I need 3 people signed off on it. Who built it, right? Who imaged it, and who checked to make sure it was done. That's a simple way to do it. The person, the role, whoever requested it is the person who keeps up with the paperwork. In some organizations, there might be another way to do it in other organizations. Then there's the reviewer. The lead reviewer captures the defect, does the paperwork, and shows that things are closed and stored in the project asset library where we put the stuff. Okay. Then there are the reviewers. If you're a reviewer, your job is to do your homework, look for the defects, and share. And you might be, hold on, let me back that one up. You might be the one responsible for fixing the stuff. But again, go ahead. We've got 5 minutes total. 7 minutes. We might run long. Okay, we're going to get on through this. Let me zip through these guys. We got to do the group. We got to do the exercise. The job ain't over till the paperwork's done. How did I do all of this? La la. You'll see this in a minute. Now, take your cards out. Diamonds, spades, hearts, and clubs. Clubs here. Diamonds, spades, hearts, and clubs. Now we need the paper. Diamonds, spades, hearts, and clubs. Okay, now these are inspirational. If you need more, let me know. Inspirational cookies. Go ahead, you may open the cookies. These are not chocolate chip cookies. Get over it. Here's your inspiration. Turn in your hymnals. I'm sorry, wrong service. Turn to the cookie recipe. take just a moment to read over the cookie recipe to yourself. Someone in the group, please volunteer to record the defects on the defect log. Everybody take a moment, and when you find a mistake, fill out the defect log on your own. Now don't share anything with anybody just yet. You see the defect log? It's on the back of the cookie recipe. Now just take a minute to read that. You guys got this in the back? Now, show me in one hand at every table who's going to record the defects. Who's going to do it? Raise your hand. You're the recorder. Who's recording for the spades? Who's going to record? The man with the default pen. Okay. Who's going to record for you guys? Who's recording for hearts? Okay. Who's recording for clubs? You got a recorder. Okay. You got 3 minutes. Find the defects. Go. The recipe. These are inspirational. There you go, fellas. These are Mexicans. Let's start with the spades, guys. How many defects have you guys found so far? 3. How many defects so far? Are you concentrating on fixing them or finding them? How many defects? 3. How many defects? How many defects so far? They've got 4. Okay. What's your first defect, guys? No chocolate. What do you mean? You mean there's no chocolate chip specified in the recipe? Who else found that? They found the same thing. Did you guys hear that? Did you hear how on task we are? Did you guys hear what they said? There's no chocolate chip specified. Okay, you got that one. What else did you find that was different, guys? The diamonds. What did you find different than no chocolate chips? Say again? A cup of nuts. Anybody think a cup of nuts maybe not right? Why would it be suspect? Okay, is it a matter of taste? Okay, could be. You guys, hearts. Right? So you don't know what to do with the brown sugar. You guys notice that? It doesn't say what to do with the brown sugar. The cooking time is different. What do you mean? So it's vague. What did you guys find? The timing on. Yeah. Now, is anybody in this room a professional baker? Go ahead. Liquids? There's no liquids. Did everybody see that? No liquids. If it's melted. Yeah. So the instructions on how to do it as a pan are vague, missing entirely. Does it matter if it's vague, if it's incorrect? Right, we got the list. You see on the handout? Does it matter really? Yeah, but what's important is that we catch it, right? What we call it doesn't really matter. Right. Whether it's the showstopper or not could be useful in helping the project manager, right, to determine which ones to tackle first. But the most important thing is what's wrong with this recipe. That's one of the most important things, right? Certainly. And there's probably other, I don't know, it's been 20 years since I put the defects in. I don't even remember what they are now. And, yeah, eat the cookies, yes. Please eat the cookies. You guys you were so on task. Please, open the cookies. Eat them. All right, let me hit the last few slides so you know where we're going. I really don't remember putting that in here. So when you're doing the peer review, it's important to capture the defects and make sure, so you got this little thing, right? This is a real simple defect log. And then you would take a copy of this. Even if you didn't have source safe or any of those other pieces, you can use this on your workbench in your garage, right? With a group of 4 to find the defects and get them out of whatever it is you do, right? This is just a simple example of a defect log. Then you put it in the PAL. We did the exercise, la 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 la. We talked about the cookie recipe. Okay, the peer review. The purpose of the peer review is to make sure that whatever you're doing is right. Right? It's not hard. This is not rocket science. We could be in a nursing home. We could be in an elementary school. We could be at the funeral parlor, or anywhere in between. Anywhere in life. Where? I thought you said bedroom, and I was going to say good idea. We talk about classifying defects as what kind of defect it is, how important is the thing, talk about group peer reviews versus one-on-one, and how to give leadership. Any questions? Which one? Anything with cookies is good. Yes, sir. Well, it's a peer review. It could be an approach. You're talking about a whole approach. Yes, exactly. Well, if you have a standard that says we're going to use a bubble sort or quick sort versus a sequential sort, right? You could catch that in a peer review. And that would be a standards violation. Exactly. Remember the slide where we had the little arrows going back? That's the idea. You do it early, just like voting. You vote early and often. Go ahead. You beat me to my punchline. Let's see. That's back when I used to care. And that's the done slide. Thank you. The best hand wins.